From the land of Old Bay and overflowing coolers, where dad bods are a badge of honor and Sundays mean football, not yard work. This is the Dad Bods Crab Cakes and Sports. Your home for crab cakes, cold beers, and all the sports talk you can handle. Here are your hosts, guys who know their stats, love their teams, and definitely aren't skipping dessert. Mike Frisky, Jason Weisbecker, and John Lanscraner. Baltimore's best sportscast starts right now. Gentlemen, how are we today? This evening?
Good, man. How are you doing?
Good. We just got blown out and didn't have to play the bottom of the fourth inning, so I got home a little early from Camden's baseball game. You know?
That's a silver lining,
Mike.
John. Yeah, silver
It
lining.
very much is.
As long as you're not on the walk carousel, that's what I remember from Little League. It's like, here comes the next batter. Oh, 4 pitches, walk.
He's using the pitching machine with a little arm thing, so they don't walk. It's mostly either strikeouts or they've scored 5 runs in the inning and then they move on to the next team. So. Not like soccer where it's just a running clock, if you get up by like double digits or something.
Time sports are a beautiful thing sometimes, but baseball is such a wonderful game.
Yeah, like Earl
Jason
Weaver
as a
said,
visitor. Yeah.
What was Earl Weaver's famous line?
I don't know. I'm watching Jason chasing his son out of the studio, which is making me laugh because we all know how that is.
Yeah. I just put my children to bed, and they're excited because we're getting ready to go on a cruise in a few days. So they just got their bags packed, and then they like to be prepared a couple days ahead of time.
It's not warm enough in Florida. You got to go somewhere even warmer, or what?
Yeah, sort of. It's been a little chilly here, so we're gonna go to the ABC Islands of the. I believe it's the Netherlands Antilles, to be geographically correct. Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao. ABC Islands.
Nice.
Yeah. So I think you guys, I'm going to have to trust that you guys can fly solo next week by yourselves. That you won't have any technical difficulties.
Oh, it'll be hard, John, but I think we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I trust you guys. I know that high quality education that you've received throughout the years, that you guys will be able to do it, and I will listen when I get back on my 3.5-hour drive home from Miami. So
we'll miss you, John. I'm sure that'll be a long swim, buddy.
Oh yeah. I gotta. I mean, we're from Baltimore. We have to follow the greats like Michael Phelps. We got to be able to swim fast and far. So we'll see. But tonight's show, we got some Ravens offensive line to talk about. We got Terps are playing live right now, and they're struggling a little bit against Michigan State. And of course, we'll talk a little bit of O's, and then we got the NFL Combine coming up, and then we got some press conferences with Coach Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta and a few other Ravens things to talk about. And then we'll end our show as we always do with our blast from the past, where we come up with Orioles greats who we didn't remember were on the team. And I think this week I got a really good one. I think I'll go away, and then I'll let you guys know when I come back.
Okay. Challenge accepted.
Fantastic, Jason. So, Jason, you're doing okay? Cole just wanted some dad time, huh?
Oh yeah, he wants to know why he can't come in here, and he can see me through the door, but he can't come in. It's all right. I'm very popular. I can't help it. So I have so last week, John, you asked Mike a question that I did not get to answer, and I was very frustrated that I did not get to be part of this. You had asked Mike what it's like for the Orioles, what it's going to be like for the Orioles to have to draft at the back of the draft for years over the next few years and whatnot. And my rebuttal to all of that is, if you're paying attention, you would notice that both Jordan Westberg and Gunnar Henderson were taken 30th or 31st, actually, I believe is what Westberg was drafted in the first round. And then Gunnar was part of the comp round. So that was in the 30s as well. So I don't think they're having a hard time picking from the 30s. So just to reiterate that, I mean, this year they picked what? It was in the 20s, like 21, 22. And I mean, obviously we'll see how that all pans out. But these guys don't seem to have a trouble finding any talent anywhere within the draft. So I think they'll be just fine.
Well, I take your opinion to heart, Jason. I think we get another comp. I think we get a comp pick this year somewhere in the 35 to 40 range for Burns, and then do we get one for Santander or not? I don't remember if we do for him or not, and I don't know where that pick would be. So we got two.
I think they get 2. Yeah.
So we're going to be drafting what, like 26th, and then somewhere, and then 2 probably between 35 and 50. Probably.
Yeah, they have something like 4. I don't want to see because I didn't check, but anywhere from like 4 or 5 or even more picks within the first 100 or so. It's a lot.
Yeah. Well, that's always. I mean, that's
and
always
a lot of damage
thing.
can be done up there.
Right, and like we talked about last week, baseball draft is just kind of a crapshoot, whereas the NFL draft is more of a little bit higher certainty. So the Orioles get the 30th pick for Corbin Burns and the 31st pick for Santander. So they'll draft 19th and then 30th, 31st, and then 58th. And then 69th. There's another competitive balanced draft round B at the end of the second round of the draft. I didn't realize that.
Yep.
So they got a lot of, but like 5 picks in the first 100, if I'm counting properly.
Yeah, so. and all these picks, I mean, they're really going to come in handy. I mean, you can trade those comp picks too, as we've talked about before. So if they want to trade those in hopes of bringing talent in anytime sooner before the trade deadline, they certainly can do that. Or they could just be using all of these picks just to replenish all the athletes that are already up. Like we have all these guys that are already up on the majors and more to come. So they do need to fill up that farm system a little bit more.
Yeah, we will. We'll have to wait and see because it's in June, and then then the guys start coming in to rookie league and then wherever else we get them from. But before that, we had we're going to start with a little bit of Ravens talk because we had a press conference this week with Coach Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta, and then we got a couple new coaches who I think we're kind of excited about. Some guys who just can't leave the Ravens. They keep coming back. Mike, did you watch the whole press conference or read some articles about it? What do you think about what they talk about? I didn't watch the whole thing. I just read kind of the summary of the whole thing.
Yeah, I watched the press conference with John Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta, and I think the main takeaways, number one, is I think they're feeling better now that they got some extra cap flexibility about signing Ronnie Stanley. Originally, I know we talked last week that it was maybe an improbable signing, where it sounds to me like they're thinking now they can hang on to Ronnie, and that will make their team that much better. I think Eric DeCosta referenced, his agent, I think her name was Kim or something, how they had a great relationship and they got the deal done the last time, which was very interesting to hear. And John Harbaugh is kind of like, hey, he's our guy. We want him. Let's do it. That's kind of message you got there. And the other thing that was interesting was just kind of with the tone they talked about Mark Andrews. It kind of sounded like they were like thanking Mark Andrews for his wonderful, contributions to the Ravens over the last, 8 to 10 years. And it almost sounded like he might be on the way out, and that, it's more likely, no pun intended, but pun intended, that they spend that money on Isaiah and get him inked for a longer term deal, and then take the money from Andrews maybe and use that elsewhere, especially if they're going to sign a Ronnie Stanley, which I don't know how I feel. I like Mark Andrews as a player. I think he's done a really nice job here in Baltimore. He's had some poor moments and some bad times, which I feel like I feel bad with a bad taste in our mouth after the playoff loss to Buffalo with the drop in the end zone and the fumble and those kind of things. I don't want that to be how we remember Mark Andrews. It feels like a bad way to go out, but they have to think long-term and future. And when you have a younger player who seems like he's ready to take and step into that spot, you have to maybe make the best football decision at that point.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I had read as well. But then they were talking about how, with Ronnie, they can probably do it in some incentive-based way that, that they'll be able to hang on to him for less for the first year or two and then figure it out from there. Because he's played, Jason, he played all games this year plus 13 games last year. So 2023, he played 13 games. Last year, he played all of the games. And I think that's the first time in his career that he's actually done that, because he signed that big deal, then got hurt, then got re-hurt, then got hurt again with a different problem.
Yeah. And I mean, that's so when the offseason happened right away, I would have bet a good amount of money that he was not returning to the Ravens. And a lot of that was the way that his contract and everything went down this year. He restructured his contract for it to terminate this year, because if you guys remember, he still had another year on that. So they moved the money around, terminated the contract after the following season or this previous season. So now he's a free agent. And then I think what happened was the cap money came out, like Mike said, and then they realized that his money or what his worth on the market was going to be well within the affordability line for them. And I think that's where we're at right now. And I think he comes back here. The Ravens always seem to be able to get their guys back, and they find the money to do so. So if they really want somebody, they're going to be able to bring them back. That's always been the case with them. But as far as his health, you are kind of rolling the dice. So incentivizing that contract for games played and whatnot and snaps played and everything, that's probably going to be the way to go with him.
Yeah, and I think the other guy on that line, if they're trying to bring him back, then is, okay, do you keep, McCary's probably, over the last, 5 years he's been on the team, he's kind of been the MVP of that line, the most versatile player. He's played every, and that's the other. If they try to do both of those guys, or if they're going to have to let McCary walk, and then Voorhees takes back over at the left guard spot where he was originally until he got hurt. Mike, what do you think? McCary's gone, and they'll draft another swing guy.
Should I save this for our offensive line segment, or are we just going for it?
Well, I guess we probably should save this for our offensive line segment.
I'm happy to talk about it, but I don't want to. I would love to leave the audience on the edge of their seat. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's leave the audience at the edge of their seat. So, was there anything, Jason, that you saw in the press conference outside of the Mark Andrews thing, which they'll save $11 million in cap space if they let him walk, or they drop him at the June 1st deadline? But they talked about kickers and a few other things. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we talked about this, and I think this is a foregone conclusion that Derrick Henry is going to get extended. It's just how many years, and that's all going to be about the money and how the money's played out. But I mean, I keep hearing people talk that like they think he can do what he did this year, which I believe was his best statistical year he's ever had, for the next 2 or 3 years. I'm always skeptical of running backs because when it's done, it happens quick, and then you're done. But this man is a freak of nature. And I mean, I don't know if we talked about this before, but he puts $250,000 a year into his body. So he's unlike anything else. So I wouldn't bet against him. So with that being said, to me, they were very clear, like that is one of their top priorities. And that's going to also free up money because with this being his second year, everything was already backloaded. So by extending him, spreading it out, it's going to allow them to do a couple things in addition to Ronnie Stanley. So that's kind of what I got, that like this is the first year where in a while where they're like, oh, they have to sign this guy. Oh, they don't sign this guy. And like last year, it was like the doors opened at the end of the year and everyone left, coaches, players. But this year, he got everything intact for the most part. So you bring back the and I'll also save my opinion on Ronnie Stanley more for the offensive line talk. But I think what I got from there is they're very happy to have more money, obviously, but also that Derrick Henry is in their long-term plans. So those are really my main takeaways. Besides the fact that the Mark Andrews thing for me is, I don't know what it was. I don't know if they were kind of like saying, we really appreciate your time here, or if they were just, I don't know. I actually am 50-50 on what I think is going to happen. I don't know.
Yeah, Jason, I found it interesting too. I agree. And I also found it interesting that, of course, they asked the Justin Tucker question because they had to. But you could tell John Harbaugh was not super comfortable answering that question. He kind of used a lot of coach speak to talk around it, said he had a conversation with Justin. Both him and Eric talked about a conversation personally that they had with Justin, but they didn't want to air that in the public, which I think is the right decision anyway. So clearly they have an idea of what's going on, and they're waiting for the NFL to come down with their conclusion when they stop and finish their investigation, which I think is the prudent way to proceed. So that was interesting. And then hearing them talk about the combine, I thought was a little bit interesting, how they do the interview process, how they talk about, they have them watch their own film and have them break down their own film and talk football. I thought that was really cool, how the Ravens want to see prospects that really love the game and want to break and know how to break down the game and are interested in improving. I think the Ravens do a really good job of not only pinpointing talent, but pinpointing the type of player they want based on their motivation and their character, their personality characteristics. So I think beyond, with the 15-minute interview, what they do some other things as well. And I think their focus is a little bit different maybe than some other teams.
Yeah, I think that's a Harbaugh thing too. Like, I mean, John isn't always like a family guy, and like he's always at least given off the idea of like best fit first. Like, how are you as a man? How are you going to fit into this culture? And then kind of go from there. So yeah, that's interesting that that's the way they do things, where it's like all the talent in the world, but I mean, if you're going to act like an a-hole, we don't want you here. So
right. And he talked about some of the positions, which I thought was interesting. He talked about running back, like you said. I think that Derrick Henry is obviously their immediate future, but they know that the shelf life of a running back is what it is. So they talked about it being a deeper draft for running backs. They talked about offensive line. They talked about safety a little bit. So they're targeting some of the same ideas that we've been talking about on the podcast, which made me feel comfortable knowing that we're kind of on the right track with where we're thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, we kind of thought about that a couple of years ago when they drafted Dobbins. There's a little bit of talk about, we have a good running back room now, and then look, that turned out to be, I mean, granted, he got hurt almost every year he was here, but that ended up being a pretty decent draft pick and something that a lot of people weren't really thinking about, because we had, at one point we had, Mark Ingram, we had Gus Edwards, we had Justice Hill still, and we didn't really need that fourth guy, but it ended up being pretty good for us, in the long run. And I think that's just the classic Ravens thing, is you take the best available player, regardless of position, and you get the guy who fits your locker room mold and your team mold as well. The play like a Raven mantra or a mentality that was set by, their forefathers and the guys like Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, things like that down the line. So we're just, I don't know. Well, we'll see. We got what, about 6 weeks left till the draft, and the NFL season, or not season, but the NFL year starts up again here shortly as well. We'll see some cuts and trades and things of that nature, free agent signings and stuff. I take it the Terps just did something really good.
Oh my
and then
goodness!
Really
It
bad.
almost made. Did he make it? He made that shot. He made a half-court shot. There is no way that went in.
That's the second Michigan State half-court shot that has broken my heart.
I cannot believe that shot went in. Gillespie had a shot to win it with 3 or 4 seconds left, 5 seconds.
Too much time left.
Yep, missed it, and then they came and chucked it and made it.
Oh my goodness. I'm not watching the game, so I just for those of you who are listening on Apple or Spotify or just in the car, Jason just literally covered his face, spun around in his chair, and almost fell out because the Michigan State just hit a half-court shot to win the game, and Maryland couldn't close it out. And that was kind of leads us into a kind of a roundabout way to another segment. The Ravens, the Terps were ranked 15th, and now that they have this happen, Mike, what do you do from here? I mean, it's the Big Ten. All the teams are pretty even across the board.
Yeah, so Maryland struggled a little bit tonight, but I think you have to give Michigan State a lot of credit. They played really strong perimeter defense and some of the best perimeter defense in the Big Ten. And they're ranked 8th in the country. This isn't a bad loss. I mean, you'd like to win that game at home if you have that opportunity. You could have really, really cemented yourself into a top 4 seed maybe in the NCAA tournament with a win there. You probably have a chance if you beat Michigan, maybe to have a chance, an outside shot at the Big Ten championship regular season, maybe. So you probably lost those opportunities, but they still have a chance to be a top 4 seed in the Big Ten tournament, which is still a really good thing, right? Double bye, or at least is it a single bye or a double bye? I think it's a single bye now because of the way that the conference is set up. Because I think there's a few teams that don't even make the Big Ten tournament the way they have it set up this year. But everything they want to do is still ahead of them, in front of them. As a Terp fan, that hurt to watch. But they have Michigan ahead of them. They got Penn State, and I think they finished with Northwestern at home in a revenge game. So I think if they can win, they should win 2 of the next 3. If they can win 3, I'd be a real happy guy.
Well, Jason, like I think you said last week, or we talked about last week, dropping out early in the Big Ten tournament and getting some rest before the NCAA tournament is not necessarily a bad thing for the Terps.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the toughest conference tournaments that you're going to go through, especially if you don't get the buys. But yeah, I mean, conference tournaments are more, to me, it's like when we were younger and we were in college and stuff, it was the greatest thing ever. And you were worried about rankings and if your team's in the top 10 or wherever they're going to be. Nowadays, it's like, at least where I come from, or the way I am, I'd rather them make the run in the NCAA tournament. So what happens in the conference tournament to me is not that important. But you win a game or 2 to maybe help your seeding. That's what's important. But then bowing out on Friday or Saturday to me would be the best case scenario. As long as I think Maryland's goal should have been to try to get a 4 seed, if not a 5 seed, because it's a much easier path than going in as a 6, a 7, an 8, or a 9. Where they're more than capable of beating anyone in the country from what I've seen over the last couple months. But to me, it's much easier if you have a better seed, obviously.
Well, the current seeding for Maryland was they were going to go to the Providence. So I'm assuming that's Providence, Rhode Island, and play Yale. They would be a 5 seed. Yale would be a 12 seed. And then if they won, they'd play the winner of St. John's and High Point. So, there is something to be said about being that seed and only being, an hour and a half plane ride from College Park. Whereas if you're, low seed or something, you may end up on the West Coast or, something like that. Mike, do you think that has any effect of their tournament if they're playing, a couple hours away in the same time zone or playing, across the country, 3 hours behind?
I mean, I'm sure it has an impact, but at this point, unless you're a top seed or a top couple seed, you're going to play somewhere other than close to home. the way the pod system works. I think for them, like Jason said, it's more important to get a top 4 seed so you don't have a tougher the first round game is really where you want to try to avoid that tough opponent. When you get 6-11, 7-10, 8-9, you're playing someone close to similar to you. When you're playing a 4-13 or a 5-12, there's a little bit more of disparity between you and your opponent. And so if you can get to that point, it gives you a little easier path to the Sweet 16. Whereas if you are, a 7 and 8, it's a lot more difficult. And second, you're going to have to play a good team when you get to the next round anyway, because if you're a 4 or 5, you're playing a 1, if your 2s are playing 3s at some point, I mean, you're going to play each other, your 2s and 6s, 3s and 7s, you're going to play a good team when you get it past the first weekend anyway. So it's just a matter of the path. And I think a lot of the NCAA tournament depends on your matchups. So when the seeding and the bracketology comes out, sometimes it's just a good matchup and sometimes it's not. So I always look at the region that they're in and see, hey, this is a good matchup. This is not a good matchup for them. Michigan State's a tough matchup for them. So that was a tough game tonight.
Well, I see that, you see that a lot in the NCAA tournament is like, why did the 3 lose to the, the 14 or whatever? And you're like, well, because the 3 was a very ball control, big guy dominated team, and the 13 was 3-point shooters. And they just don't match up properly. And, that's a lot of the times when you see the upsets. It's not that one team's better. It's just, you're playing the wrong team and the team you don't match up with properly. But Jason, you still are. Do you think that that they're going to go further or less?
I'm sorry, John. Your phone or you just completely cut out on me.
Yeah, I think you So, Jason, with the Terps, you and I are just big fans. If we're thinking with our heads, not our hearts, tell me the matchup they would want to avoid in the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, when you build an NCAA, like a team that's going to succeed in the NCAA tournament, I've said this in the past, that this is the exact type of team you want for a tournament. You play, again, like defensive and offensive efficiency are within the top 20 in the country. That's huge. Playing both sides of the ball like that. You want to avoid, I mean, it's like, they can see, but they can play down low. You want to avoid a bigger guard team, I think. So a team that can come in and beat up your guards a little bit and use their size, that might be tough. But the Terps can run if they have to run. They can shoot. Like we said, they have 3 guys that shoot over 40% from 3. The big guys, they can bang, and they rebound very well. They're one of the top rebounding teams in the country. So you probably don't, I don't know many teams that are bigger than them underneath around the entire country that can match up like that. So if you find a team that can beat up on the guards, or a team that could, even if you are big underneath, but your guards aren't big, then our guards will take advantage. So just like tonight, Michigan State played smothering defense. If you play a very good defensive team, that might give them trouble, but it'll give anybody trouble if you're a very good defensive team.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point about athletic guards, big athletic guards, because the other issue I think sometimes we have, and I saw it a little bit tonight, is, Queen plays a little bit out from the basket. So, rebounding wise, sometimes, he gives up some of those baseline gaps for rebounds, especially, offensively, he's not always underneath the basket. So for putbacks and things like that. So, he has the strength of that elbow operation area where he does a really good job there, but sometimes he gives up some of the baseline spaces. Defensively, though, he tends to do a pretty good job of clearing the boards. He had a little bit of butterfingers tonight. I think a little bit of that was just the bright light. He hasn't played in a lot of those bright light games yet. We're at the end of February, heading into March. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of hype around the team right now. He's probably never played in an Xfinity Center that has had that many fans packed and ready to go. So yeah, he had a little bit of nerves, I think, tonight. But I think this is only good for them to have this experience now before March comes around and the Big Ten tournament and the NCAA tournament. So he has that experience to kind of pull on once he gets there.
Well, and I think that's very, very true, but that's true, in any sport. And I think it's a pretty good segment here to move into our Ravens offensive line. We're going position by position, and we are every episode doing something different. So, we started out with the quarterbacks last week, and obviously our number one is already done, but we need to move on to our offensive line now. And as we talked about earlier, looks like we're going to try to bring Ronnie Stanley back, which was kind of the biggest question mark on this offensive line. Jason, what do you think that the offensive line should do? I mean, we last year we stayed pretty healthy, and didn't do a bad job.
I mean, besides quarterback, the most important position on the field could arguably be left tackle. You're protecting that quarterback, that $200 million or more investment. And what the Ravens were able to get out of Ronnie Stanley last year was exactly why they drafted him in the top 5. So obviously we mentioned there, I mean, bringing him back to me is the top priority of this offseason. And I didn't feel like that initially, but after the year he had and the as clean as Lamar was, now a lot of that's on his own too, but being able to solidify that on the left side, that's number one. And then I think what they'll look for is they're going to look mainly at guards, because if they lock up Stanley and you have Rosengarten on the right side, then I think they'll load up on some guards and guys that can play guard and tackle, and then look for a McCary replacement, someone that can swing to tackle, to guard, to center if need be. I think that's what they're going to be really looking for, either more than likely through the draft, probably not free agency.
Yeah, we just always bring it up, but it's the salary cap just kind of eats you alive and forces you to have to, go through the draft. But, Mike, we got McCary in the 5th or 6th round out of Cal, and he's played all 5 positions on the offensive line since he came in the league, I believe in 2019. And he's held up. We lost Voorhees, who won the left guard job out of training camp. We lost him, I believe it was week 2. And McCary filled in. And he wasn't just filling in, he was playing well all season.
Sure, yeah. And he went down a little bit at the end of the year, and Voorhees stepped in again. And I think Voorhees was a different player when he came back the second time, played really well. And I think Harbs was really happy with what he saw there. With that being said, and maybe the development of Voorhees and McCary, his flexibility and versatility, another team is probably going to ink him to a contract that we can't afford, especially if we're going to sign Stanley. When it comes to Stanley, Jason, just to kind of check in with you, I agree. I was listening to some sports talk, and if you have a franchise quarterback, how can you? To draft a rookie left tackle and hope is kind of a gamble. There, you have an MVP player right at quarterback, and you're going to hope that a rookie develops and does what he needs to, and protecting the blind side is kind of scary. So to have Ronnie Stanley there and to know that you have a guy in place, barring injury, that's going to take care of business is really important. With that said, Stanley is going to cost 20 to 25 million a year, right? They're going to have to clear that space. They're going to have to take care of it. There is the option of franchise tagging him. I don't see them doing that. The tag's like 25.1 million. I don't see them spending that kind of money, especially because that's all in 1 year, right? And they need to spread that deal out over a course of several years. The other thing that happens, if he signs elsewhere, he could get a mega deal elsewhere probably. They're saying he could be one of the top linemen available this year, like top 5 overall players available this year. If that's the case, the Ravens aren't going to go crazy. If they can't match a deal that's out of this world, they're going to let him go. If I think that happens, maybe they start looking at the higher end guard market, I think, and then maybe move Rosengarten to left tackle And then maybe they look at a Trey Smith from Kansas City. Maybe they look at bringing Zeitler back. Maybe they look at somebody like Becton, like you said, Jason. You like Becton. He's going to be a little bit more expensive because he's younger. Or maybe a Scherf from Jacksonville, who's he's a more expensive lineman, but he's older. So I'm thinking maybe his numbers are probably going to creep back down again from 16 million. I think he was last year. So maybe he's affordable, but you can afford to pay a little bit more for a guard like that if you're not going to sign Stanley, and then go Rosengard, and then you look for a right tackle maybe in the draft because that's a little less scary of a proposition. So some different options there.
Well, what I don't know too is, you got, Linderbaum is a heck of a player, right? But he's still young. What, Jason, I don't know if you've heard, but what has Ronnie Stanley done to help those, the three guys on the right side? Falele, Rosengard, and Linderbaum, they're all under the age of 25. And Falele, I believe, has only been playing football for 4 years total.
Yeah. Yeah, Linderbaum, first of all, he is, I believe they have him rated out as the top center in all of football. And if not, he's right there. They drafted him where they drafted him because of that and because of what he could bring to the table. But when you have somebody like Ronnie Stanley, who's been, again, very highly drafted guy, he's been with the Ravens for a very long time. He's been playing football for a long time. That type of veteran presence always relaxes everybody else on the line, especially those young guys. And yeah, it helps them grow. So yeah, I wouldn't discount anything that he has to offer to that line. The other thing I should probably add that at least I feel strongly about is if the Ravens brass, Harbaugh and DeCosta are talking about this like this, they usually have their pulse on the players, what they want to do. I have a feeling he wants to stay here. And if he wants to stay here, they'll figure out the money. Maybe he could get a mega deal somewhere else, but he lives here. He's been here his entire career. So why wouldn't he want to stay if the money's right?
Well, and additionally to that, he's going to, if he plays well, this is going to be a good team. So he only increases his value on this team that runs the ball all the time. And as an offensive lineman, you like to run the ball. You like to push instead of hold people up, right? So there's some excitement level there. Having Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson behind you to block for, it doesn't get much better than that when it comes to the NFL. So I agree with you, Jason. If he wants to stay here, there's lots of reasons that he could want to stay here.
Well, also the other thing to look at is what other Super Bowl contenders have the cap space or the the ability to even sign him. Obviously he could probably go sign somewhere else, maybe block for a Shedeur Sanders or something like that. But any team that takes Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, etc., isn't going to be winning ball games. And then also there's probably something to be said about having a guy like Lamar back there who, he's like, oh, I slipped. Well, Joe Flacco would have went down, but Lamar probably, got a run or a creative pass play for, huge amounts when you make a little mistake. And Lamar, I think, has both good and bad for an offensive lineman, Jason, I that's kind of what I'm thinking as never playing offensive line before, but I would think Lamar's a pretty good guy to have back there.
Oh man. He does make their jobs a lot easier. He makes them look good on a lot of plays, but these guys are also, this offensive line rates is one of the best in the NFL and with the run and with the pass. But Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, they make anybody look good. So, there's still some give and take there. One makes the other look good. It's like the chicken and the egg theory. Who does what for who? I don't know if what he wants to do. I'm not friends with him. I don't know him yet. So I'm not exactly sure.
I like the chicken and the egg theory, but right now I'd buy chicken over buying eggs because eggs are like, I don't know, $7 to $10 a dozen.
Dude.
So if I'm eating $1 an egg, I don't even know.
I don't know how it is there, but we only eat part of our health kick and whatnot is we try to only eat range or what is it? Range free or bleh.
free range chicken.
Free range or pasture raised eggs. And first of all, you can't find them here. And if you do find them, they're $10.99 a dozen right now.
Oh my goodness.
$4.50 a dozen 3 months ago. But the hurricane and then this bird flu totally like driving us crazy. That's insane.
Hey, so real quick, Jason, you said pasteurized, which brings me to a really good dad joke. I know John's on the edge of his seat for this. Why is milk the fastest drink?
Oh boy. I don't know, Mike.
Because it's pasteurized before you even know it.
Oh my God.
Oh my goodness.
That's why.
Yeah. Is that the joke that caught Julie's attention, huh?
It is, and that stunned silence is the amazement that the boys are having over the amazing dad joke I just gave. So
I don't know what to say.
Real quick, back to offensive line because I don't want to I don't want to entertain you. I'm here to talk. So there are 2 left tackles in the free agent market if we can't find if we can't sign Ronnie Stanley. And we talked about this the last time we talked about offensive line. Jedrick Willis, who is out of Alabama from Cleveland, I think he's 25 or 26 years old. He had some injury history there in Cleveland. Might be somebody that if they can't sign Stanley and they're looking to replace left tackle, maybe they're afraid to go draft. That could be somebody. And Alaric Jackson from the LA Rams. You know, obviously they're just coming off their $4 million contracts or whatever. They're going to get paid a little bit. But they could be potential fallback options. I know, Jason, you talked about Cam Robinson with the Vikings. He'll probably be a little bit more expensive. But again, we have to think plan B, plan C. If you're Eric DeCosta, things don't always fall the way you want to initially. You have to have a plan in place to back that up.
Very, very, very true. And I guess we're going to kind of jump into another segment here about I wanted to get this in here too. You know, baseball is not going to be on ESPN anymore. On Sunday nights, they're cutting their contract or when I don't even know if it expired. It was just reported that they weren't putting baseball anymore. And they've been cutting back on games the last few years. But you guys think, is that because of all the streaming that a lot of people are just streaming the games, or they're going on like the MASN and the other things, or what do you guys think? What do you think the big deal is? I mean, they cut in 2017, they cut out Baseball Tonight. They don't have Baseball Tonight anymore on ESPN since 2017. Jason, you're shaking your head.
Yeah, I mean, so it's kind of irritating to me. I mean, growing up, ESPN was like it's a way to find out how all your favorite teams did. And you could watch Sports Center on loop for hours at a time until you figured out how the Orioles did the night before or how the Ravens did or whatever the case may be. And that's how it all started. And then it just changed into something totally different. And now it seems like that ESPN has zero interest in baseball even being discussed there. They're actually, I believe, it seems to me that they're moving everything towards the NBA, and that the NBA is where their interest lies. I don't know what type of handshake deals they have and payouts they have going off of that, but I know that the MLB backed out because it's like, you're not doing enough for us. So we don't want to keep doing it. Like, you're not promoting us. You're not. So they're done. And, ESPN, I always look forward to watching Sunday night football and stuff like that. What is that? Sorry about that, fellas. I don't even know what that was.
Is that a little dance party you're having in your studio, Jason?
Oh my goodness.
Well,
anyway,
here's kind of the thing too, Jay. I was thinking about this too. Is baseball, even much more than football, is a more like localized thing. That there's Orioles fans like where you and I are because they're in Sarasota. They're in Sarasota when I think the Rays, they have spring training there before the Rays came. So you have like Yankees fans down here. You have others fans because of where spring training is. But usually it's a very localized thing. So they get, like when John Miller was the voice of the Birds before he went to ESPN and got with Harold Reynolds on Sunday night baseball. I think people prefer baseball because it's a much better radio sport to listen to, but B, they like having those like local guys to talk about the teams, and they're there day in and day out, Mike. Like you take that too, because like I've heard Mike Bordick was on Masson for a while, but then I'd heard he got taken off because he just didn't have enough like social media presence and things, and now they got Ben McDonald and Jim Palmer and these other guys. What do you think, Mike?
There's a couple things just to piggyback on Jason. Yeah, ESPN isn't what we used to watch when we were a kid. Like ESPN is more about content and, having two people debate over a specific topic. It's not really about delivery of the news anymore or the crawl on the bottom line. It's about trying to increase viewership through debate, basically. And then as far as Sunday Night Baseball is concerned, I remember John Miller, man. That's why I like his voice, man, is what I think of when I think of Sunday Night Baseball. That's not there anymore. And it hasn't been that way for a while. And I haven't tuned in nearly as much over the last 4 or 5 years to Sunday Night Baseball. But I loved being able to watch some of the better teams in the better matchups that you might not get locally all the time. And that was the exciting part about Sunday Night Baseball. When I could see, Yankees and Mariners in 1995 or whatever, I don't know, something like really awesome that you might not see locally. And, it's so much easier to catch those local games on MLB network or on your streaming service now than it was back in the day. You remember there wasn't much. If you weren't watching your local team on your local home team sports network or your local Fox network, you weren't seeing any of those other teams play unless they were a highlight game on like a Saturday on Fox or a Sunday night on ESPN. So some of the nostalgia that's gone and some of the practicality of it's gone. The other thing with baseball is it's not a timed game. So when you are carrying a baseball game and it goes to extras now, obviously there's been some different rules to speed up the game, but there's no guarantee you have other content you want to deliver on your network that you're going to be limited to that specific space and time. Whereas these other sports that are timed, you know exactly how much time you have to allot for that particular event.
I think there's something that's very wise, Mike. I really think, unfortunately, like, I love baseball. I know you guys do as well. But for some, for viewership wise, you can get 3 NBA games in the span of maybe one baseball game, maybe 2 baseball games. And think about there's the viewership of the NBA games and stuff. And I think that's kind of the way it's going, just because of, like, I think the time issue, and then the kind of localization more so of baseball than some of the other, you can find Dallas Cowboys fans around the country. You can't find Baltimore Orioles fans or, Tampa Bay Rays fans or things around the country. You find them kind of centrally located geographical areas. But that was just kind of, I think, our big news of the week on that. So there was an article that was sent to us by you, Jason, about the different divisions and kind of the MVPs, the managers of the year, and things. You want to start us off on that, Jason? I think you sent us that.
Yeah, I mean, Major League Baseball did their awards that they would give out per division. So the MVP of the American League East, the Cy Young Award winner of the American League East, Rookie of the Year, etc. And that came out for every division in baseball.
Yeah. So the AL East, let me pull this up here.
So here, I can help you here. So for the AL East, they started off with MVP. And they said that the MVP, their prediction of the MVP, and this is by Major League Baseball, the MVP would be Gunnar Henderson for the American League East. So, I mean, I 100% agree with that. I actually think that he's a dark horse to win the MVP in all of baseball. Might be worth putting a couple shekels down on it if you're of the betting type. But I think he's a third or fourth. He has a third or fourth highest odds of winning the MVP so far this year.
Now, Jason, when we talk about these awards and these the article there, are they talking about just within the AL East, or are they talking about contenders to win the MVP from the AL East?
No, they're saying win the AL East for who's the best player in this particular division.
Gotcha. So I have a list of I like to make lists if you guys haven't figured that out yet, but I have a list of like 5 guys. But my number one, and I always try to look at somebody who's on the contract year because they tend to perform really, really well and be very, very motivated. So my guy is Vladdy Jr. with Toronto. I think he has a good shot to come out and be the 35, 40 home run, 100 RBI guy. And he had a down year last year. I think he bounces back. He's got a little protection in the lineup with Santander. If they get a little bit of a bounce back from Bichette, they should have a little bit better lineup. And he might be traded at midseason. I don't know. He might not even be a contender for AL East MVP by the time the season's over because he might not even be in the AL East. But my second is Aaron Judge. I don't think you can not have him in your top 2 or 3 every year, the way he's capable of hitting home runs and just hits in the middle of that lineup. The one thing that worries me about Judge is his health. But I think they're moving him over to a corner outfield spot, so that should keep him a little bit more healthy, hopefully this season. And then I have Gunnar, and then here's my guy to look out for is Alex Bregman, because I think the ballpark there in Boston is conducive to a right-handed hitter, and they have a nice little lineup they're putting together. I think they're going to have a good season, so he's my dark horse.
Okay, I stand corrected. So the article was that these are their predicted players to come out of the American League East to win baseball's MVP, Cy Young, Rookie of the Year. And then the caveat of this article was you can only pick 1 player per team, because that kind of changes it for me on something I was going to predict later.
But we can do what we want, right, Jason? Because this is our podcast. So, yeah. So I think you guys take it whatever direction you want to. I will listen.
Perfect. Well, either or, winning the best player out of the American League East or the best player in baseball. I think coming out of the American League East, Gunnar Henderson is the best player out of that division for the MVP award. Now, as far as John, what's your prediction there? What do you think?
I think I would put Gunnar, Vladdy, and Judge, as the top 3. But like Mike, like you said, I would agree that Vladdy's gonna play his heart out because he sees that Soto contract with the Mets, and I think that kind of is showing him that, what, man, if I can get my numbers up and I can become, that much more valuable, traded at the deadline, maybe get a World Series ring and then get paid, down the line. But I think that Judge staying healthy, Gunnar staying healthy, and Vladdy really kind of upping his game, one of those 3 guys could easily win the MVP without a doubt.
Yeah.
So what, Jason? I think they did multiple awards. So what did they have for Cy Young?
So for Cy Young, and ironically enough, I actually agree with this one too, is Garrett Crochet from Boston as being the Cy Young Award winner in baseball coming out of the American League East. Out of all the options in American League East, I would say between Crochet and actually would be Fried for me. Those would be my top 2 this year. I think Crochet has actually a legitimate shot of winning the Cy Young Award winner, not just being the best out of the American League East to do it.
Are you sure it's Fried and not fried? Because I love fried foods and things like that. And that's how they spell it. I'm just saying. That's how I get the dad bod. So my guy.
That's what his mother said. No, that's what his mother said.
So I have a list. Are you guys surprised? But number 1, I like this guy from last year. I thought he showed really well at the end of the season, and I think I'm going to pick him because it's fun and different. Is Taj Bradley? He's a pitcher for the Rays. I think he's slotted probably as their number 2 pitcher. McClanahan is probably the guy that most people would pick, but his stuff is nasty. And they said he was working on a really a different kind of slider that kind of moves a little bit and try to differentiate between his fastball and his breaking ball a little bit and kind of change speeds. I think if he makes that adjustment, He has a possibility to win that award from the AL East. And then, a few other guys I think I should mention. Grayson. I think if Grayson has an awesome year, there's no reason with the bats in the lineup that he can't win, 17 to 20 games if everything kind of falls his way. And he's always had the stuff. It's just a matter of the mental edge that he needs to be an ace. And if he can develop the way that the Orioles think he can, I think there's an opportunity there for him to win the award. And then I think Crochet has got to be in the conversation, Jason. You're not wrong there.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too, Mike. That I think Crochet is probably at the top because you look at like the Yankees pitchers; they're all older. They still have good stuff, but they don't have the Cy Young quality caliber stuff. But I think Crochet's at the top, and then I was gonna say Grayson as well. I think the year under a guy like Burns, the year just working with Burns and his leadership and things may have, well, the Orioles hope and we as fans hope that gives him kind of the next bump he needed. That now, Grayson, you're the guy. You're going to take this staff to the next level and you're going to have to do it. And, that remains to be seen.
Yeah,
so then we have Rookie of the Year. Is that next, Jason?
Yeah, Rookie of the Year was next. And this article picked Jason Dominguez from the New York Yankees, the outfielder. He is in my top 3. I also have a list for this one, but he's not my ultimate choice. I like Junior Caminero from the Rays a lot. And I also, as a kind of a dark horse, but I wouldn't be surprised, is Sagano from the Orioles. And then Jason Dominguez. I've just heard so much about Jason Dominguez over the years. And when he came in the second half, not last year, but the year before for the Yankees, before he got hurt, he put up a lot of numbers really quick. Steals a lot of bags, hits a good amount of home runs. I am really high on Junior Caminero. I think he's going to have a great year. He could hit 30 home runs in that small Tampa ballpark, spring training park that they'll be playing at this year.
Why don't you go next, John, so I don't steal all your thunder?
Well, I think just in having read the stuff about Dominguez, he's at the top. Another guy who some people were like, the whole Bregman trade is going to hurt him, but it is Christian Campbell, the Red Sox. They said that he can play basically all 8 positions on the field, and they're going to put him in the outfield. In 115 minor league games, Campbell hit 330, slugging 439 on base, 5.58 slugging with 20 homers and 24 steals across all 3 levels last year in the Red Sox organization. So I did a little research on him, and he definitely, depending on how this transition to the outfield goes for him, he could be right up there with Dominguez, and I just think those two guys are going to be neck and neck. Again, it's a crapshoot. Are they going to stay healthy? Are they going to adjust to major league pitching? Are they going to adjust to all of the changes coming from AAA to the majors? Playing three levels of ball last year. What does that do to you when you go to the majors? But you know what? It's just a kind of a roll of the die.
Yeah. So my guy is someone who came up last year for a little while, played really well with Toronto and kind of got hurt. His name's Will Wagner. He's a second baseman for the Blue Jays. He has really good numbers in the minors, hitting around 300 all the time. Between 800 and 900 OPS, and he is a guy, like I said, if he can get on base for Vladdy, and they have a better lineup this year than they had last year, play a good second base defensively, I think he has a chance to really, in a wide open American League Rookie of the Year, has a chance to kind of take that opportunity. Jason, you had the same idea I did with Sugano. He was my number 2 guy. I think if he pitches anywhere near what he's capable of and what he did in the Japanese league, I think he's got an outside shot there too, as a solid starter. Maybe if he goes sub, like around the low 3s, maybe ERA, that puts him in the conversation. And then, like you said, Dominguez, I think he's got two S's in his name, Jace. He doesn't spell his name the same way you do. It's a little weird, but
I know.
I guess we'll excuse him of that. And but he's highly touted out of the Yankee system. But watch out for Heston Kjerstad. If he hits 20, 30 bombs this year, he's got an outside shot too.
Well, I wonder if Wagner wins. I'm assuming he would be the only father-son pair to have won the Rolaids reliever of the year and the rookie of the year, father-son duo. I'm assuming. I don't know. I would have to do some research on that, but that is Billy Wagner's son, the former relief pitcher for the Astros and the Mets, and I think he played for the Phillies too at some point. Never played for the O's though. So that moves us then into our final segment here, which is, I think, our favorite segment, which we each have. It's our Blast from the Past segment. We've each picked one former Orioles player who we may not have remembered, or you may not have remembered, were on the Orioles. So, Jason, would you like to start us off tonight?
Sure. Now, remember, guys, I kind of added a little thing to this. I don't know if you saw it in the show notes, but only one guess per person tonight. One guess. Okay, so my guy was on the Orioles roster for 2 years. Okay, 93 and 94. He played in 5 World Series. He played for the Phillies, the Cardinals, the Royals, and the Braves in 2 of those World Series. So those are all the teams he went to the World Series. He was the leadoff hitter for the Braves in that pretty awesome 1991 World Series, where he hit 3 home runs in that series and probably would have been set up to be the MVP if the Braves would have won that series. And he played again for the Orioles in 93 and 94. Oh, man, I didn't know I'd stump you guys that bad. Don't you remember the 91 World Series? That was awesome. Now, what were you, like 2, John?
Yeah, something like that.
Oh, man.
Something like that.
Oh, I don't know. John, what do you got? You got a guess?
It's not Marquise Grissom, is it?
No. Nice try, though.
That is a good try. Yeah. Kenny Lofton keeps coming to my head, but I know he never played for the Orioles, so I know it's not that guy.
He played on the Indians. He never played on the Braves.
No guesses?
It's not Dion.
It's not Dion. He did play in the 92 World Series, though, with the Braves.
My best guess was Marquise Grissom. I don't have another.
Yeah, we only have one guess, Jason. So at this point,
one guess each. Between you, like you get a guess, Mike.
Oh, good. That's good. I'm glad I get a guess.
Do you have one?
I'm pretty stumped, Jason. What do you got?
Lonnie Smith.
Yeah, I didn't realize. I forgot he was an Oriole. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I love this segment.
I know. I mean, I feel like I dig them up for you guys. Like, come on now. Donovan, you'd be so proud. This was your idea. This is what you created.
I definitely remember Lonnie Smith as a Brave. I have zero recollection of him as an Oriole. So I think that was an awesome pull on your part.
Yeah, his rookie year was 1978. So he was around for.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to go next. Ready, guys?
I'm ready.
Right. So my Oriole, my former Oriole, was drafted in 1981 in the first round by the New York Mets. He played for the following teams: Mets, Pirates, Reds, Indians, and Expos. His Oriole career was between 1989 and 1992. He had more career walks than strikeouts and had a on-base percentage. The lowest on-base percentage he ever had in his career was .379. And in 1990, he had a .408 on-base percentage. For the Orioles, he played first base and left field. Anybody know?
Oh man, can you name the teams one more time?
Mets, Pirates, Orioles, Reds, Indians, Expos.
In
David
that order.
Segui.
Yes.
David Segui?
No, in that order. That was the order. It was not David Segui. But you are awfully close because David Segui actually replaced this guy the second time he got replaced. Because the first time he got replaced by Glenn Davis.
Oh, I think I know who it is. I know who it is.
All right, well let John guess, and then I'll let you have it. I'll let you have another one. John, can I give you another hint?
Yeah, I have an idea, but
he was number 39.
Yeah, I know who it is.
And he was the original Moose.
Oh, come on.
I'll give my guess to Jason because I'm
It's
stumped.
Randy Milligan. That's who
it is Randy Milligan. His Moose nickname was stolen very quickly after he left.
Oh, that's fabulous. All right, John, who you got?
All right. So this gentleman is in the Hall of Fame. He pitched his last MLB appearance. He was in the big leagues for almost 17 years. He played for the Cubs, drafted by the Cubs, Red Sox, Cardinals, Yankees, Orioles, California Angels, Reds, and Expos.
Oh, that's it? That's all you give it? When did he play with the Orioles?
He played for the Orioles in the strike-shortened 1994 season.
Oh, Lee Smith or Lee Smith.
Yes. Yes, Lee Smith.
That was the example I gave when we started this whole game. That was
oh, was it? Was it? I didn't even remember that. Didn't even remember that.
Well, fabulous, fellas. Good job.
Well done, Jason. I'm proud of your vast knowledge of baseball, Orioles history.
Yeah, the problem is, guys, like this is like you guys, even though you're only 6 years older than I was like in diapers still when all this stuff is going on. So I'm having to like really research and figure this stuff out. So it's
there was a stadium before Oriole Park. It was called Memorial Stadium, and it was downtown on 33rd Street. And I saw some baseball games there. Jason, I'm sure you did too, right?
I did. There was also one that was before that burnt down. It was made out of wood.
You weren't there for those, though.
No, I wasn't around for that.
I saw baseball and football games at Memorial Stadium.
Oh, look at you!
I don't think I ever saw an Orioles game there, but the Bowie Bay Sox played there for a season, and then I saw the Ravens play there. At one point.
You know what this sounds like? John's like, I saw a typewriter once in a magazine. Great, awesome. Thanks, John.
Well, gentlemen, it's been fun. Thanks you all for tuning in. That's going to wrap it up for this episode of Dad Bods, Crab Cakes, and Sports. Thanks for hanging out with us. You know we had a blast. We appreciate you all tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe on Red Circle, Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. And while we're at it, leave us a review. It really helps us out. We're trying to spread the good word about Baltimore sports far and wide. Be sure to follow us on social media for more behind-the-scenes action, memes, bad dad jokes, and even worse sports takes. You can find us at dadbods_crabcakes_sports on Instagram or dadbods crabcakes and sports on Facebook. Got a question or a topic? We'd love to hear from you. Hit us up on social media. We might even shout you out in the next episode. Got a question or topic? Let us know. We would love to talk about it. Until next time, keep rocking those dad bods, keep eating those crab cakes, and never miss the game. See you next time, folks.